Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
And stay with the college football stuff. But as I just told you a minute ago, I do believe that while I personally think that Tennessee LSU is the most interesting game of the weekend, with the most storylines going in, or the most real storylines, right? I do think the one that I think most of America is going to be focused on is the one that we've been talking about, frankly, really since about a year ago now, but certainly since May, and that's Texas A&M Alabama. And it's for all the reasons we've discussed. It's for all the reasons you already know. But just as a quick reminder, A&M, a program, hires Jimbo Fisher to beat Nick Saban. It takes a while. Jimbo Fisher does it, and it feels like the trajectory of Texas A&M is on the way up. They signed the #1 recruiting class in the history of high school football last year. And of course, Nick Saban isn't very happy about it. At a booster meeting, he says that that Texas A&M bought every single player in their recruiting class. We have the big back and forth, and we think it's going to lead to this mega showdown on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. CBS, they only get one game a year to broadcast in primetime, and they have chosen this one. And while the game itself feels like there's a little air out of the bubble because, one, Texas A&M just isn't very good, but two, Bryce Young is hurt, just because it feels like it's not quite as big as we thought it was going to be, what I will tell you is this: do not tell that to Nick Saban, because Nick Saban had really just another one of his all-time rants on Tuesday following practice. And so what I wanted to talk a little bit about his rant, talk a little bit about something that he said on Wednesday, and then I think talk about the message behind the message, because with Nick Saban, it's never really about just what he says, but what he is saying actually means. And so first of all, let's get to his rant. Obviously, again, the big storyline coming in from the Alabama perspective, outside of the Saban comments, is the fact that we don't know the status of Bryce Young. Now, Nick Saban has said that he's done some things at practice, but he has obviously been limited, left Saturday's game with a shoulder injury. And so the conversation becomes, will he play? How much will he play if he is available at all? And so media session on Tuesday, I'm a member of the media. It's the question everybody wants asked. I feel bad for the guy or girl that actually did ask it, but Nick Saban was asked about Bryce Young's health and was not very happy about it. Here is what Nick Saban had to say. He said, again, I don't talk to Jimbo Fisher on a regular basis, but I'll call him and tell him right after this conference if you want me to. And then he continues, frustrated that we continue to ask about Bryce Young. I mean, you guys think I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with our offense and our team? You might as well make it up. I saw today where there's headlines in the paper where I'm going to keep it a secret what we're going to do with Bryce. It sounded like me making that statement. I've never said that, but it was there in black and white, so you can make up whatever you want to make it up. Nick Saban coming in hot. What do you want? You want me to call Jimbo Fisher? Is that what you want me to do? You want me to tell you guys in the media our entire offensive game plan? Well, it ain't happening. It ain't happening, so quit asking, okay? And so Nick Saban has this all-time rant, another just great rant, right? But I do think, I was thinking about, what does this rant mean, right? Because the thing about Nick Saban, as I just said a minute ago, when he says something, it's never about what he's actually saying, but it's about the message behind the message. And so I heard this rant, and then I heard him talk after practice on Wednesday during his normal media availability, where he was actually pretty calm. But he actually opened the media availability, which I think is important because it's kind of his opening message. And what he said was essentially, this time of year, it's easy to be worn down, but it's about consistency, and consistency starts at practice, and that's how it translates to games. So you have the big rant about, what do you want me to do? Tell you all my secrets, followed by a message about consistency. And it really struck me, what could Nick Saban be saying with this rant? Well, to me, I think I know what the answer is. I think it's pretty clear. And I think if his players get that message, Texas A&M should be very afraid. To me, what Nick Saban's message said was this. It said, look, Maybe Bryce Young's going to play this weekend. Maybe he is not. But I don't want excuses. I do not care. This is what I believe Nick Saban is saying to his players. I don't care. I don't want excuses. I don't care if Bryce Young plays or not. I am showing up in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night ready to kick the crap out of Texas A&M. And if we don't have our starting quarterback, it's no different than not having an offensive guard, a punter, a left tackle, a cornerback. Next man up, no excuses. We're showing up to win and dominate. That is the message that I believe Nick Saban is delivering. And frankly, it's for a few reasons that we've talked about over the last couple weeks. When you think about this Alabama team, think about the reason that Nick Saban would put out that comment and that message to his team. It seems pretty straightforward to me. This is a team that over the last 2 years, now they were great last weekend, but over the last 2 years has been very emotional, very up and down, to use an awful pun, kind of rises and sinks with the tide. When things are going good, especially at home, they ride the momentum and they kick the crap out of teams. You don't need me to tell you, but there were plenty of examples over the last couple of years, and they have literally destroyed everybody other than Texas this year. The problem is, like I just said a minute ago, over the last couple of years, we have seen that when things don't start to go their way, I don't want to say they play tight, but they don't play with the fearlessness that Alabama has played with over the previous, decade or so, 15 plus years that Nick Saban has been there. Go back to all the results that we've talked about on this show over the last 2 years. A 2-point win at Florida. Florida was not good last year. They fired Dan Mullen. This is last year I'm going back to. Narrow home win against LSU, 20-14 final score, 6 yards rushing. You play who else? Auburn, multiple overtimes, bad Auburn team, whatever. You lose at Texas A&M. You nearly lose at Texas. And so Nick Saban is basically saying, I have seen you guys. You've ridden the highest of highs, but when you get low, and I am not accepting that this weekend. Why I think it is especially important, I'll take it a step further. I think it's especially important for this particular group at this particular time. Again, I'm not saying they're soft. I'm not saying they're mentally soft. But what I am saying is this is a team that for the first time in the last 2 years, since all those guys left, Mac Jones left, and Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, left, and Jalen Waddle left, and all those guys left, they're really coming off a game where they really had a ton of adversity, where they were backs against the wall, and they stepped up and delivered. And we talked about that on Monday's show, right? We talked about the fact that at Arkansas, a lot of stuff did not go their way. Most notably, Bryce Young gets hurt. You're up 21-0 when he leaves. You score a touchdown right after. But then all of a sudden, that 28-0 lead becomes 28-23. And so to the credit of this particular group of Alabama players, what happened? Rather than folding, they do what they do. A couple guys step up. Jahmyr Gibbs starts ripping off crazy runs. He's running at 25 miles an hour or whatever it was, and they win going away. And so to reiterate my point, I think what Nick Saban was saying was, remember that moment at Arkansas when you were starting to doubt yourself? Remember that moment when you dug deep and you said, we are not losing this game? And as a matter of fact, not only are we not losing this game, we're going to go put Arkansas out of their misery and show why we believe that we are the number one team in the country. Well, I need that for all 60 minutes this coming weekend. And oh, by the way, that is what Bryce Young's status is not an excuse. As I just said a minute ago, I'm not telling Jimbo Fisher the game plan. I'm not telling the media the game plan, but it really doesn't matter. If Bryce Young doesn't play, next man up. Jalen Milroe, the backup. It's time to step up. You got a scholarship here at Alabama too, and it's time to get going. And so to me, that was what that Nick Saban rant said. And what I will tell you is what I told you a week ago. Remember we talked about, the term that, what was it? Hateful competitors that Nick Saban talked about. And all his players said, coach has been telling us this for 2 years, and we're starting to figure out what that means. Well, I'm going to take it a step further. If his players are getting this message, I'd be very afraid, because I think they had plenty of motivation coming in. Obviously, it's not, and I think the motivation is misguided. I think most people think, oh, it's the motivation of what Nick Saban versus Jimbo Fisher, what they said over the summer. No, I think the motivation is Texas A&M beat you last year at home, stormed the field, had the time of their lives, and they started making all sorts of declarations of where this program was. And so I think that motivation was already there. But then Bryce Young gets hurt. Then Texas A&M isn't as good as we thought. And all of a sudden, it'd be good for a young team, or it'd be easy, I should say, for a young team that is coming off a big road win to come into this one and say a couple things. One, we got it. We're fine. This team isn't good. The top 10 team on the schedule is actually next week against Tennessee, or this is another win on our way to an SEC West title. That's one. And I think Nick Saban's saying, don't even think about that. I want you coming in locked in, focused on this game. This game is the most important one, and I want to embarrass the other team across from me. At the same time, I think it's also Nick Saban saying, I don't care if Bryce Young's playing. That's not an excuse. And once again, if Alabama's players are listening to that message, I would be very afraid because they listened last week at Arkansas and it got out of hand late. I'll be very curious to see if they got the message on this one and what it means for Saturday in Tuscaloosa against Texas A&M. I'd be nervous if I was Texas A&M because Nick Saban's fired up, and I think his team is going to be fired up on Saturday as well.